Welcome to Fantasy Football Today, Dynasty. I am your host, your anxious host, Heath Cummings, here today. The most anxiety-inducing shows we do, live mock drafts where I am the host. I brought on my good friend from Football Guys, Alfredo Brown, to help me through this process. He has the second pick in this draft, and I'll just tell you that people are fired up to draft because we had 6 picks in like the first 10 seconds of me hitting go. Alfredo, thank you for being here today. How excited are you to do a live mock draft while you try to talk about it at the same time?
Oh my gosh. No, at all. I hate it so much. We share the same anxiety. I was just telling you before we did this. I'm just so happy that I don't have to be the one hosting. So just super excited about that.
I am happy to be able to help you. This is a Superflex tight end premium startup mock draft. And let's just get the draft board right up there, Devo, because this draft is moving quickly. We've got a lot of red on the screen for the quarterbacks to start. Jacob Gibbs started the draft off with Josh Allen. Alfredo, you took Lamar Jackson right after that. Dave took Jaden Daniels. Somebody asked me on social media last week, maybe, they said, what's the best pick to have in a startup? And so I actually, because I can't just answer the question, I had to go through my values and see like the first 2 rounds, where do you get the most value in my trade chart, picking from what spot? And it was actually 3, because you're guaranteed to get one of Allen, Jackson, or Daniels. And then the second round's a little bit flatter. I think those 3 really stand out above the rest, though. You took Jackson over Daniels here. I actually rank it Daniels, Jackson, Allen. Do you view these first 3 as just personal preference picks?
100% personal preference picks. I just did a similar episode talking about dynasty quarterbacks for the Football Guys fantasy show, and Dave Kluge and I had our rankings in like the exact inverse, kind of similar to you. He values a lot more youth in dynasty. I am of the belief that I think most people playing dynasty are just far too impatient, so I don't want to go so against the grain, and I want to be playing for now, which is why I tend to be a bit more comfortable going with some of these older guys like a Lamar Jackson over a Jaden Daniels. We've just seen it over and over and over with a guy like Lamar. So I'm comfortable going with a veteran over a young guy, even though there's so much promise. I mean, what Jaden Daniels did as a rookie was incredible, but we see it all the time with guys like Stroud, Herbert, where that second year isn't always as great. Jaden Daniels, though, I do think is a bit different. There's a lot more rushing upside there. So to give it all that nice pretty bow, I don't think you can go wrong with those top 3 picks. And I do think it is 100% personal preference. It's how you play Dynasty.
We are already to my pick at the end of the draft, and I thought it was interesting. This is our first tight end premium mock in quite a while. And Brock Bowers, I would say, fell all the way to the 9th pick. I think he's worth a first round pick if it's not tight end premium. So absolutely love that for him. I'm trying to decide if I want to take Trey McBride at the end of round 1 or the start of round 2. And you know what? I do. I'm going to go with a 1-2 turn of Ashton Genty and Trey McBride. So let's just go ahead and recap the first round, and we'll see what stands out to us there. It goes Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, then Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Jalen Hurts, Justin Jefferson, Patrick Mahomes, Brock Bowers, Bijan Robinson, Justin Herbert, and Ashton Genty. So Allen, Jackson, Daniels, Burrow, Chase, Hurts, Jefferson, Mahomes, Bowers, Robinson, Herbert, Genty. For me, the 2 picks that really stand out as it's hard to get value in round 1, but maybe you got a little bit of value in round 1 are Mahomes at pick 8 and Bowers at pick 9. Do you like those values?
The Mahomes, I think, is kind of right on par. Just because we've seen the slipping a little bit over the years, and I don't know if there's a huge gap between him and some of the other guys that are around like quarterback 12. The Bowers pick, though, like that's the one that really stands out to me. I could have seen him go at the 106 and been like, yeah, that makes sense. So that's the one that I look at, and Jeff Blaylock, man, good job. That's a solid pick there in round 1. What I'm actually most curious about, Heath, is you going Genty and McBride at the turn here, no quarterbacks and no Gibbs. What's the process there?
Yeah, I am a little bit worried about the fact I'm not so much the no Gibbs part, but the no quarterbacks or no wide receivers. And you're not picking again until pick 48 or 36. Right. That doesn't feel great. But for me, I really struggle between Genty and Gibbs. And the thing that's got me leaning Genty right now is I'm actually a little bit concerned, not that the Lions offense is going to be below average or even average. I think they're going to be a good offense. But I think it is maybe true that we've had a little bit too much of a glossing over of the fact that the Lions, an historically great offense over the last 2 years, just lost the guy who we think is the mad genius, Ben Johnson. Right. And now we're all boosting the Bears for this coming year. And it doesn't matter for the Lions. They just hired some other guy who's not been an offensive coordinator in the NFL, and they're going to be just as good. And then their starting center retires at 29 years old. And so the offensive line concerns and the coordinator concerns have me a little lower on Gibbs this year for redraft. I would actually take Genty over Gibbs in redraft also. So that makes it pretty easy to put him ahead of Gibbs in Dynasty. But I was more concerned about not taking a quarterback or a wide receiver there than I was about not taking Jahmyr Gibbs. I see that you've made your pick in round 2. You're on the clock already for round 3. So I'm going to go ahead and read through the round 2 picks real quick. Trey McBride, I started the round with him. Malik Neighbors was the guy I struggled with. The very next guy taken. I kind of wish I would have taken him. We'll see where the rest of the tight ends go in this draft. But he goes Trey McBride, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas. Then Caleb Williams, the next quarterback drafted, CeeDee Lamb, Jahmyr Gibbs, Nico Collins, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Tyler Warren, Puka Nacua. You took Drake May, and then Drake London. So Drake back-to-back there at the end of round 2. I think Drake May at this is QB, and I thought Justin Herbert went a little bit early too. Sorry for saying that, RJ, but that's the way I rank it. But I still think Drake May at QB 9 is just a little bit higher than what you see for consensus. Do you expect a big leap for him this year?
Yeah, I do. And honestly, what I like here with my quarterback spot is that I've got guys with high rushing upside, and we kind of already saw Drake May was flirting with a lot of fringe QB1 games with really nothing around him, a poor offense, bad offensive line, lack of weapons, all those things. So yeah, I'm expecting a pretty nice jump from him. Given the additions on the offensive line, Patriots have 5 new offensive linemen. Not all of them are starters, but they understood that they needed to change the ecosystem. The addition of Steph Diggs, whatever that hopefully turns into, Kyle Williams, and then Travion Henderson is one of these guys that I think is just going to be a nice outlet for him out of the backfield when he does get in trouble, and it's also a really good pass blocker. So yeah, I'm comfortable with him there. I have Drake May around that quarterback 9 to 11 range, where it's essentially very similar to those top 3, where you have Caleb, Drake May, and Bo Nix sort of all interchangeable based on who you feel most comfortable with.
And I think when I look at that range of the quarterbacks, you said it was a 9 through 11 range. When I look at my values on the trade chart, for me, it's really almost a 7 through 14 range. I mean, there's a little bit of separation in there, but yes, Caleb Williams should be QB7 right now. That's where I rank him, but there's a lot of question marks about Caleb Williams and whether he's actually going to be good. And you got other guys in there like Purdy and Love who are coming off of down years, Kyler, who we know the upside, but we also know the downside, and Bo Nix. We're seeing a little bit of a quarterback, maybe, I guess not quite a run. Have the quarterbacks fallen a little further in this mock than what you're used to in Superflex?
Yeah, definitely. I was expecting to see names like Kyler and Baker and Cam Ward off the board here in the 3rd round, and seeing CJ Stroud go in the middle of the 3rd, Brock Purdy now. Yeah, it makes me think maybe I could have waited, and good on you for going with 2 skill guys early in this, because, well, you know what? I'm not going to give it away because I see Adam Azer and RJ White are up, and I kind of don't want to give away something that might be your pick here. But, I think it's going to turn out well for you here on this turn, going from 3 to 4.
Now, we did have a comment in the chat, Warren in round 2 with the old exclamation mark, question mark combination. And I think that's the bigger surprise for me was maybe not Warren in round 2, but Warren over Laporta or Colston Loveland. Where are you at on those three guys in Dynasty? Are they all kind of the same tier? And isn't it more surprising that we've only had 3 tight ends in the first 3 rounds?
So I'll answer the Warren thing first. I think this is such a horrible cop-out answer for Dynasty, but I think they are kind of all interchangeable because so much of Sam Laporta has been touchdown-based volume. And I think where the excitement with Warren comes from is that I think there are a lot of people that are already ready to just say the Anthony Richardson thing might be done in Indy with another shoulder injury. So it's okay. We get a year of Daniel Jones, who's going to target players out of the slot, and then maybe it's a new quarterback season next year, and we get a bright future for Tyler Warren. And his versatility, I know, gives him some value there. And then the other guy, Colston Loveland, that was such a roller coaster during the draft where I was super excited. Okay, cool. We've got a guy who can play in the slot for Ben Johnson. This will be fun. Then they draft Luther Burden. I'm like, okay, there's another guy that can play in the slot. And then there's talk about DJ Moore doing that. I don't think there should be a gap between Warren and Colston Loveland. And honestly, it's sometimes, and when I'm feeling, Colston Loveland for me is ahead of Warren in my dynasty rankings right now. So seeing him probably go here in the 4th round, surprising.
Yeah, and I think the Laporta thing is surprising because most people have him at tight end 3 and then the 2 rookies right after him. But the one thing about Laporta, and I think something to remember about tight end premium leagues in general, the premium's not on touchdowns. The premium's not on yards.
Right.
The premium's on receptions. And that may not be a strong point for Sam Laporta. So far he's been a guy who's really scored a lot of his fantasy points based on the touchdowns he scored. You don't get any edge for those in a tight end premium league. He's still going to get a boost on his catches, but a boost on 60 or 70 catches is not the same as you're getting from Bowers or McBride, who may have 100 catches in a single season. Let's take a look at round 3. Ladd McConkey led off that round. Then you took JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba, followed by Travis Hunter, then Bo Nix, Saquon Barkley, Omarion Hampton, CJ Stroud, Brock Purdy, Garrett Wilson. Azer took Devon Achane, which I think was one of the better values in this draft so far. It pains me to say that, but good job, Adam Azer. Marvin Harrison Jr., and then I took Jordan Love and Kyler Murray at the 3-4 turn, feeling much better about not taking a quarterback in the first 2 rounds after those 2 fell to me at the end of round 4. Very happy about that. So again, round 3 goes McConkey, JSN, Hunter, Nix, Barkley, Hampton, Stroud, Purdy, Wilson, Achane, Harrison, Love. You just made your round 4 pick, so I can ask you the question. When you took JSN, was Travis Hunter in your mind also, or do you think that's a little bit early for him?
I think it's a little bit early for him, and I love Travis Hunter as a talent. I just don't know if there's a lot of guys on teams that were saying, oh, he's potentially the 2nd wide receiver on that roster or 2nd in targets, and I want to take him in the top 3 rounds. Could he easily overtake Brian Thomas this year? Easily is probably too strong of a word, but I think it's possible. Travis Hunter, man, like I struggle with it because I just want to see what they're going to do. Are they going to limit his offensive snaps to then get him on the other side of the ball? It's a weird thing, and it's hard to make the decisions on him that early in the draft. So oftentimes I'm just passing on him in startups, but I still love where he's going in rookie drafts where he's usually not the top pick. So I'm happy with that.
You are on the clock for round 5. This is a spectacularly fast mock draft. You guys are doing a very good job of moving through the draft so that people get to see more picks. You're also making it very difficult on me to try to keep up with the draft, but I'm going to go ahead and read round 4 while Alfredo has 15 seconds left to make his round 5 pick. I took Kyler Murray to start the round. Then we did have a little bit of a quarterback run. Baker Mayfield, Jared Goff, Colston Loveland finally gets drafted, A.J. Brown, Bucky Irving, Trevor Lawrence, another quarterback, Jonathan Taylor, T. Higgins, Sam Laporta, Tet McMillan, Rashee Rice. So Murray, Mayfield, Goff, Loveland, A.J. Brown, Irving, Lawrence, Taylor, Higgins, Laporta, McMillan, Rice. You do not have a quarterback. You made your 5th pick. We'll talk about that in a second. You don't have a tight end. Laporta went 1 pick before you. First off, was that devastating? And second, once we get past these top 5 tight ends, how much do we still care about tight end premium?
I I think there's maybe like one more guy in there that I could probably throw into that mix, and it's TJ Hawkinson who's still on the board. And I think once we get out of there, I'm less inclined to be drafting a tight end because there's not really much of a difference. A bunch of these guys are just a touchdown away from being top 5 tight end that week. There's a few names that I like on there that hopefully I'll end up drafting one and I can talk about them later. But yeah, I think it's once we get past the TJ Hawkinson in these startups that tight end premium is just gone for me.
I am not feeling as good about my 3-4 turn because of the dearth of quarterbacks that have been taken since then. Just 3 quarterbacks basically taken in the next 2 rounds. My top 4 players available are all quarterbacks, and they are Cam Ward, Dak Prescott, JJ McCarthy, and Justin Fields. I'm higher on Justin Fields than everybody. I know that. But what do you do when you're in a draft like this and you've already kind of filled a position by taking 2 quarterbacks, and then you look at it and the quarterbacks are not coming off the board like you want them to?
I don't think there's much you can do. I mean, you just live with your picks that you made, but this is sometimes where I start to get the idea of maybe I could just get a little spicy with my picks and just keep leaning into more quarterbacks and take a look at these teams that haven't picked up their guys and maybe make some trades later on. I'm not doing that for the sake of this mock draft because I want to build out an actual roster. I don't think it's time for you to panic when that happens. You just sit there and keep taking the guys that are still best at the top of the board. And I don't know that you're missing out on too much. I know that you would probably rather get some better quarterback value later in drafts, but the 2 guys you took, Love and Murray, I think that was the right move at that turn. I maybe would have gone Mayfield and Murray, but the difference is negligible between the 2 of them.
Yeah, the really uncomfortable thing for me sitting here at the 5-6 turn with my number 2 running back, Ashton Genty, my number 2 tight end, Trey McBride, and 2 borderline starting quarterbacks in Jordan Love and Kyler Murray, is I don't have a wide receiver in a dynasty startup, and that feels disgusting. But I also think that Dak Prescott is just a screaming value here, and this is a good time to remember, like Alfredo said, you have to just take the best players. You don't need to fill out a starting lineup during your startup draft. And quarterbacks are the one position in this format that people are always desperate for. So I took Dak Prescott, and then I made a mistake and clicked the wrong button. And I don't think I can do anything about it.
I was wondering if that was just you were going all in on this strategy, just have all the currency.
I do also now have Bryce Young. And this is what happens, folks, when you host a podcast and you do a mock draft. And it's also 2 minutes past the time I was supposed to take a break. So I'm going to bury my head in shame. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back with this Superflex mock draft.
The clock never stops. Relive the greatest moments with uninterrupted highlights and more.
It's Gareth Bale! Ronaldo! Wonderful goal!
On the UEFA Champions League channel. Streaming free.
All right, I've recovered. Matt says QB hoarder. Heath at it again. You know what? This is not a bad strategy in a Superflex startup draft to just end up with 5 quarterbacks and then make everybody overpay you when we get to the season and they realize, oh, wait, I have to start 2 every week. So yeah, it was a strategy. That's what I'm doing. Good luck trading those extra quarterbacks. I'll have no trouble turning quarterbacks into wide receivers. Don't worry about that. Jaquan, though, says some absolute steals at running back in this draft. I don't know that people would have thought that way coming into last year, but last year was the year of the running back, especially the year of the running back. I thought Kyron Williams in round 5 was a fantastic value. I think some of the running Chase Brown in round 6, that's the guy I wanted to take when I accidentally clicked on Bryce Young. So yes, I would agree. There have been some really good values. Have you changed your philosophy at all, Alfredo, on the running back position in Dynasty after what we saw last year? And really not just the older running backs, but we kind of saw a return to more running in NFL offenses.
I wouldn't say it's necessarily changed because I was never really all that out on running backs to begin with in Dynasty. I felt like that was a thing of just, take as many wide receivers as you can, get your running backs later. I usually like to have one of those anchor sort of hero RB running backs like I did right now with Josh Jacobs, and I'm on the clock right now. And
Then I'll
there's a
read
guy-
through round 5 while
Yeah,
you
go
make
for
your
it.
pick. So
Yeah.
it was a running back heavy round. We saw Brees Hall, Josh Jacobs, Christian McCaffrey, then Xavier Worthy, Kyron Williams, Roma Dunze, then George Kittle, TJ Hawkinson, Justin Fields, then Cam Ward, James Cook, and I took Dak Prescott, which I loved. So again, Hall, Jacobs, McCaffrey, Worthy, Williams, Odunze, Kittle, Hawkinson, Fields, and Ward. When we were talking about the tight ends that were left, I think you said Hawkinson was the last one you really cared about. Kittle is, again, like Laporta, somebody who's an elite tight end, but not necessarily going to do it with his catches, and he's older. If you take George Kittle in round 5, are you leaning more towards a win now mentality?
I would think so. I think whenever you take any of these guys like a Kittle or some of these running backs that started to go off the board in this last round, like a Derrick Henry, yeah, you're leaning more towards into win now because you kind of have to. A guy like George Kittle, you've probably got 1 year left, maybe 2 years left of elite production because so much of what Kittle does is running after the catch. And with tight ends, once they hit that age cliff, it just falls off rapidly. And Heath, I hate to do this, but yeah, we kind of saw it a little bit with Travis Kelce. And, I don't want to get caught holding that bag unless I am competing for this year. And so if my first couple picks indicate, yes, I'm competing for this year, then awesome. That's the route that I'll go with such a pivotal position in tight end premium. And it's George Kittle. Yeah, then yeah, I'm all in on that.
So you made 2 picks here at the 6-7 turn. You knew that I didn't have any wide receivers yet. So you took 2 more of them. Thank you for that, Alfredo.
You're welcome.
You went with Jalen Waddle and Jameson Williams. We've heard a lot of positive talk about Jameson Williams coming from Dan Campbell, who has a pretty reliable track record of talking about what his players are going to do, and then they do it. I haven't heard as much positivity about Jalen Waddle. I mean, we saw the picture of one of his lineman teammates wearing his jersey that freaked everybody out for a second.
Yeah.
But who are you more optimistic? I mean, you took Waddle first. Do you view these guys pretty similarly, though? You're just hoping they hit the upside, but recognize there's not a ton of floor?
So with Waddle, I do think that there's a decent amount of floor, but or at least there has been in the past. What worries me is that the floor might fall out on the Miami Dolphins altogether. And if that happens, he seems like one of those guys that is just the cornerstone of the offense. If they decide, okay, Mike McDaniels, it's time to go. Tua, it's been fun. Let's get a new quarterback in here. Tyreek Hill, yeah, that experiment has been terrible now as of late. Jalen Waddle kind of feels like the only guy that's going to be a cornerstone of that offense. So no matter what happens, even if the floor falls out for the Dolphins, Waddle should still be a big part of the offense going forward. And then Jameson Williams, everything that you just said, Dan Campbell's been talking him up. Jameson Williams has been a guy that I really liked since he was a rookie, and it's just been a weird start for him. But last year we saw the big breakout. And what I kind of like that I've been able to do here is wide receivers tend to score more points than running backs, at least in the past. That's how it's been. And the fact that I can get a good group of 4 young wide receivers, that it's a mix where I think JSN and Tet McMillan are going to have that volume, whereas Waddle and Williams are going to give me those splashy big plays. I kind of like having that balance at the wide receiver position. And really all I have left is tight end, which I think the difference is going to be interchangeable. And then running back, which the RB2 always tends to be like the least valuable position in fantasy or dynasty football.
So you have 2 quarterbacks, 4 wide receivers, 1 running back. You don't really feel that urgency to attack either position. Are you okay if the best values available are quarterbacks, wide receivers, just sticking with that approach for another turn?
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%. I'm looking right now at tight end position. Dalton Kincaid is at the top of the board for tight end here on Sleeper. And that doesn't intrigue me at all. Mark Andrews doesn't intrigue me at all. Like there's nothing really there that says, okay, I have that urgency. I need to go get tight end. And then looking at quarterback, I mean, there's some nice names there that I can go and get a third quarterback and have some nice trade value, or a guy that can spot start for me. So I don't necessarily know that I have a huge urgency at either of those positions. And running back is still deep, Heath. Like it's sneaky deep, the running back spot here. I think there's like a good maybe 10 more running backs that I'd be comfortable with as my RB2. And a lot of teams in our league, which is like the thing to look at, a lot of teams in our league have already drafted not 1, 2, but 3 running backs. So I don't know that we're going to get a whole lot coming off the board anytime soon.
I'm about to take my second running back, and then I'll recap round 6 and compare that, because I'm going to take Quinshon Judkins here at the end of round 7. And then I'll take finally a wide receiver in Jordan Addison to start round 8. At least I have one of them. But if you look at round, I believe it was 7. So it starts off with my Bryce Young pick. Then Chase Brown, Trevion Henderson, Caleb Johnson, Chuba Hubbard. It was a running back run. J.J. McCarthy, thought that was a good value pick there. Devontae Smith, Derrick Henry, Terry McLaurin, Michael Penix, you took Waddle, and then R.J. Harvey goes at the end of round 6. I took Quinshon Judkins at the end of round 7. I'm still a Judkins over Harvey guy, but I'm in a great majority or minority when it comes to that. We had the whole crisis with J.K. Dobbins going out to Denver and having dinner with Sean Payton. How are you feeling about Harvey, and specifically Harvey versus Judkins?
I think Harvey's a good player, and I think it was really exciting where he got drafted in the NFL draft. And I think that now, because of that, the price keeps getting richer and richer and richer on RJ Harvey, where he sort of loses that, like, that's a fun pick status, where you're
Right.
really happy with the value, and it just keeps getting steamed up that I'm almost kind of just like, I can't take him out of principle at this point because it's just too high for me. Judkins, I think, has a really good opportunity to be on the field for all 3 downs. Now, my only problem is just we don't really know what the Browns are going to be. I think they say that they want to run the ball, but if they're going to be behind in games a lot and they need to pass the ball, and then all of a sudden we're looking at a new quarterback next year, what's their identity going to be? And running backs just tend to get lost in the shuffle too much when identities for teams change. I mean, Breece Hall is a perfect example of that, where we haven't really seen him reach his full potential because the identity of the Jets is different every single year and they don't quite know what they are. So that's the only thing that worries me about Judkins. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't nervous about RJ Harvey, because I think Sean Payton hates all of us.
That unquestionably, that was true. Let's take a look at round 7. Ken Walker went 1 pick after RJ Harvey. I thought Walker was an absolute steal at the start of round 7. Then you took Jamison Williams, Tyreek Hill, and Emeka Ibuka go back to back. Then Tua and Dart. Then DJ Moore, Joe Mixon, Zay Flowers. I had Zay Flowers in the queue. You've done that to me a few times, Jeff Laylock. I might block you next time. Chris Olave, Dalton Kincaid, and Quinshon Judkins. So it goes Walker, Williams, Hill, Ibuka, Tua, Dart, Moore, Mixon, Flowers, Olave, Kincaid, Judkins. We've seen a couple of the older running backs now, Mixon and Henry, and McCaffrey the round before that, come off of the board. What is your general view on those guys that kind of surprised us last year because they were still good when they were old, and now they're another year older? Are you just gonna, like, we can't doubt Derrick Henry anymore? We're gonna just draft Joe Mixon until he's not good anymore? Where are you at with those guys?
Some of these guys are closer to being not good than others. I think Derrick Henry is still very, very good and on a good offense, whereas Joe Mixon is like, he's teetering closer to not being good. The efficiency started to fall off late in the season, and the Texans' offensive line just isn't good. I think that when you're looking at these older running backs that are still performing, I guess it's okay to throw out age for the single season and just look at situation, which is usually not the Dynasty MO, looking at situations, just look at talent. But for these older guys, if it's just going to be 1 year, it's going to be that rental. You have to look at the ecosystem around them. And like, Joe Mixon's one of those guys that I'm not super excited about. And I don't want to say it because Dave Richards still hasn't picked, but if my guy's here now, I may have another old running back that I'm excited about for at least one more season here in Dynasty.
There's quite an interesting conversation going on in the draft chat, which, why is somebody who's hosting a podcast and doing a draft looking at the draft chat?
Thanks,
don't
Dave
know,
Richard.
but Alfredo is on the clock here. So I'll just tell you guys that Dan Schneider is 117 years old when it comes to technology, and you should all tease him about this relentlessly. I just sent him a GIF of an older gentleman trying to figure out his phone, and that is 100% Dan. I will recap round 8 here as soon as we get a couple more picks in, but I can tell you, before we talked about it, Alfredo did not have a tight end through 7 rounds. He doesn't now through 8 rounds. He just took another wide receiver. And we saw a pretty massive tight end run happen between your 7th and your 8th pick. We had Dalton Kincaid taken at the end of round 7, Tucker Kraft with the 8-2, Elijah Arroyo. I was a little surprised by that one. Adam Azer at the 8.3, Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, Isaiah Likely go back to back to back. And oh my gosh, I have to just tell you guys, for those of you who are not watching on YouTube, Kyle Pitts has been drafted. Way to go, Alfredo. But anyway, when you look at Andrews and Likely, I think those are really difficult players to value in Dynasty and to know what to do with depending on whether you're contending or rebuilding. Because I know we're all excited about what Likely has done with the few times he's gotten an opportunity, but Andrews is back. Andrews saw almost no targets last year, but scored double-digit touchdowns, so it didn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Are you just thinking I'm waiting one more year and then Isaiah Likely is going to be a must-start tight end? Are you just thinking that I'm hoping that Andrews gives me a top 10 year and this is probably his final year?
I'm not hoping that for Mark Andrews, if I'm being honest. Like the Ravens are doing this thing where they just keep collecting more old guys that are like still decent at football, not great but decent, and they added DeAndre Hopkins this year, and Mark Andrews, so much of his success came in those final 5-6 games where it was just touchdown after touchdown after touchdown. I remember all of us sitting there in week 5, I think it was, where he was just getting dropped in all kinds of leagues, all manner of leagues. And I'm not saying that we're going to face that same up and down again this year, but I just have no interest in drafting him, whether I believe I'm competing, rebuilding, going for the long game, whatever it is. I really don't have an interest in drafting Mark Andrews because I think that his floor at the tight end position is the scariest of anyone that's been drafted so far. And I got to say, I think it's really similar with Isaiah Likely. I know there's a lot of hope for a guy that could be valuable next year. There's a lot of those guys that are going to get drafted in 2 or 3 rounds, you know, the Terrence Fergusons and a bunch of these other rookies and young guys. So yeah, the Ravens tight end situation is just so weird to me and annoying. And you're right, don't know how to value it, but I just know that I don't want to select it early in my startup drafts.
No, I think not wanting to select it early is a good and easy answer. Adam Azer just sniped me with the Cortland Sutton pick at the end of round 9. We're going to take our second break, then I'll recap round 8 and round 9.
The most original musical ever is now streaming on Paramount Plus.
I'm just giving the people what they want.
Better Man absolutely sizzles from start to finish. Better Man, now streaming on Paramount Plus.
So round 8 goes Jordan Addison, Tucker Kraft, Elijah Arroyo, DK Metcalf, Matthew Golden, Isaiah Pacheco, Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, Isaiah Likely, Alvin Kamara, Brandon Ayuk, Sam Darnold. Again, that was Addison, Kraft, Arroyo, Metcalf, Golden, Pacheco, Andrews, Kelce, Likely, Kamara, Ayuk, Darnold. I still have one wide receiver. I'm on the clock in round 9. And I think at this point, a lot of times I'll shift to, is there a way that I can still have a wide receiver 1? And I think there's one of those left, and I'm going to take him right here. It's Devontae Adams. He's performed like a wide receiver 1 pretty much anywhere he's been. He's in a highly concentrated offense. I think you can still see 140 targets with Puka Nacua on the same team. And I'm going to follow it up. You may just hold those great pick thoughts, because one of my favorite dynasty values right now, a guy I traded for yesterday right before our podcast, and that's DeAndre Swift. Because I think in round 10, if you can get a guy who currently is the clear lead back in a Ben Johnson offense and everyone on the Bears gets the Ben Johnson shine except for DeAndre Swift, you're drafting him really close to what he's probably going to be worth going into this. And you have the upside that what if he's just the RB1 for Ben Johnson for a year? I'm going to be able to turn that into a first round pick by midseason.
Yeah, I think, the way you laid out that plan is almost exactly how you have to do it, because I do think there is an expiration date on this with DeAndre Swift. I don't think it's necessarily a Ben Johnson thing. I do think it's a bit of a DeAndre Swift thing, because we've seen him with multiple coaching staffs and things always just get weird after about 10 games where the relationship starts to get a little heated. But yeah, I mean, I think if we're going to get 6, 7, 8 games of potentially strong DeAndre Swift production, I want that on my dynasty team, and I want that as a bargaining chip when I'm just there on the trade market. Especially someone like you, the way your team is built right now, where you have multiple quarterbacks and a DeAndre Swift, that's where you go to someone and you try to level up at that running back spot, maybe acquire some draft picks for the future, whatever it might be.
Let's read through round 9 here. Jacob Gibbs took the double tap at the 8-9 turn. I didn't even notice this until now. Sam Darnold and then Jalen Milroe. That's kind of both exciting and confusing. Kyle Pitts goes next, then Ricky Pearsall, Luther Burden, Matthew Stafford, Mason Taylor, Mike Evans, Jerry Jeudy, George Pickens, Cortland Sutton, Jaden Reed, Devontae Adams. I tell you what, as a guy who is sitting there at the end of round 9 with one wide receiver on his roster, what you really want to see is a run of 5 wide receivers go right before you pick. So I was super excited to see that. You took Pitts with the second pick of that round. I thought it was interesting. The third pick of the next round was David Njoku. He's the one guy who, for me, is kind of like Devontae Adams in this situation, that I don't know if you're getting more than one more year, but I feel pretty confident if David Njoku plays a full season this year, he's going to be a major difference maker, especially in this format of tight end premium.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of these guys that are in that spot. Yeah, David Njoku is a guy I think you're probably going to get the same type of production that you would get, maybe even better than a Mark Andrews or a Travis Kelce that went 2 rounds ahead. So I love that value there. And then to combine them, I hate that we're saying good things about Azer, but to combine them with a rookie there that might be good in a year or two is great. And Dave Richard is just really frustrating me because he keeps sniping all of my picks in this draft, because that was one of those veteran running backs that I was looking at here, James Conner, that he just took off the board. He did it to me earlier with Alvin Kamara. He's like in the same mindset as me. Just old running backs are fun to take at this point in the draft.
We got some comments going on in the chat about Anthony Richardson and being drafted too early. He obviously just suffered the re-aggravation maybe of the AC shoulder injury. He's hoping to return sometimes during training camp. I am making the transition in my projections today to projecting this offense with Daniel Jones as the quarterback instead of Anthony Richardson. Maybe I should have done that a little bit earlier, but I do think it's an interesting conversation, Alfredo. If you just view it as Richardson's probably going to start the year as the QB2 in Indianapolis, I certainly don't expect Daniel Jones to start 17 games this year. And we know that Richardson has 30-point weekly upside when he's healthy and starting. How do you I think he's obviously a QB3 now in Superflex, but how early are you willing to take that QB3 that is high on upside, but has almost no floor now?
I think the specifics with Anthony Richardson here is not even necessarily the fantasy upside and floor. It's kind of what you said about Daniel Jones, who's not going to start all 17 games. And I don't think that's going to happen with Anthony Richardson. And I don't think that this coaching regime lasts into the next season. And I think we end up seeing a big staffing change. And so with Richardson, it's less about the floor and ceiling he can give me in this 1 year. It's more about that I don't know how much value there's going to be after a year from now. Now, he could go the Justin Fields route and be one of these guys that bounces from team to team and keeps his dynasty value long into his career because of the rushing upside. And that's something to consider. So to have him as the quarterback 3 is not terrible, but if I think there's better value on the board, did he go? Yeah, like he went before Geno Smith. I know Geno's old. I probably would have just taken Geno over him if I needed a quarterback 3.
And the top quarterbacks available, I mean, if you're looking for a starter, it's probably Aaron Rodgers or Daniel Jones. And if you're looking for a prospect, it's probably Tyler Shuck or Shadur Sanders. And neither one of those guys have Anthony Richardson upside. So I don't think we're too far from the range where you take him. I agree. I would rather have Geno certainly as my QB2 and probably as my QB3. We are already in round 11 of this draft. I read round 9. Let's go through round 10. It's DeAndre Swift, Anthony Richardson, David Njoku, Brian Robinson Jr., David Montgomery, Geno Smith, Jaden Higgins, Michael Pittman, Terrence Ferguson, James Conner, Aaron Jones, Cam Scattaboo. I want to jump right ahead, though, to your pick in round 11. You took Jack Besh 1 pick after Trey Harris went. I took Trey Harris or Jack Besh over Trey Harris in a startup, not startup, in a rookie draft for a real league earlier this morning. I love Jack Besh, but I rarely find people that are as excited about him as I am. So I'd just like for you to say some nice things about Jack Besh now, please.
You have come to the right place, sir, because I am a big Besh believer. Man, I loved the tape that I saw from him, and he does so many things that I felt very uncomfortable making this player comp in the Football Guys rookie guide, but I comped him to Puka Nacua because they have such a similar play style in that they can play outside or in the slot, and they're so physical through the catch point and so good at finding space against zone. And guys like that have sure hands. He had one of the best catch rates of anyone in the entire class. These are that's the archetype of wide receiver that ends up being successful in the league. And now that he's going to be attached to a quarterback in Geno Smith that can give him some fantasy value here in year one, I'm not worried about this being a slow play in a bad offense that's going to take time for him to get targets or big plays. Now, he's not going to be I'm not going to say probably, he's not going to be the top target. It's Brock Bowers, but there's a decent avenue here where Besh actually becomes number 2 on the team in targets and overtakes Jacoby Myers for that spot. And either way, there's just not a lot of rookie wide receivers walking into starting roles with his level of talent and the volume that could be there. So yeah, I love Besh for this year and going forward.
We had some talk in the chat about how Quentin Johnston was talked about as the starter at Chargers OTA. There were some rumors that Trey Harris maybe came in out of shape. Do you share the same level of excitement for Harris, or were you kind of like me, a little more skeptical of him even before this news?
I was skeptical of him before this news. I felt mean because when the Chargers made this pick and we were live on our live stream for that round of the draft for Football Guys, I laughed because I was just like, why'd we get more Quentin Johnston? We have Quentin Johnston at home. We don't need to do this again. And it seems like there is an archetype, a prototype wide receiver that they really want here. And I understand there's some upside with Trey Harris, but he's never been that great of a route runner. He doesn't always use his size like we'd like to see. I think there's just a lot for him to learn. And that's what worries me with wide receivers coming into the league. We've seen this archetype so many times with Treylon Burks and Laviska Shenault, and Quentin Johnston is another one where it's just these guys that need to learn how to run routes better and how to separate better and do all the things that professional wide receivers do. You don't get that opportunity to learn that in training camp, especially when you're an early pick. You either need to hit the ground running and be part of the offensive game plan, or you're going to get left behind. And so I think Trey Harris is going to have a few of those big pop-off weeks where everyone's like, yes, finally. And he's going to catch 2 touchdowns, or he's going to have a big gain. And then he's going to go right back next week to being 2 targets, 1 catch, 8 yards, something like that. And we might see that for a little while. I hope he can progress because he's a fun player to watch, but the inconsistencies were just too much for me that I never really caught on to the hype.
Dan Schneier made me very angry, paying me back for making old man jokes about him because he took Harold Fannin in round 11. And I play this game in both startups and rookie drafts. How far can I wait for Harold Fannin? Because nobody else likes him quite as much as I do, and I waited 1 round too long. I guess I should have taken him instead of DeAndre Swift, which I probably wouldn't have done anyway. But I pretty much view Fannin as, if the Browns keep their coaching staff for next year, as the heir apparent to the Njoku role. He's in his last year of his contract. He's a guy who led the NCAA in both receptions and receiving yards. Yeah, hit the little dinger. I referenced it again. As a tight end, I love his skill set. And I think he could just, like, as soon as next year, be a must-start tight end. Do you have hope for Fannin, or were you a little more discouraged than I was by the combine performance?
I was less discouraged by the combine performance, and I never really had him as a top 3 tight end in this class anyway, so I think he kind of went appropriately, like where he was supposed to go. But I almost think that the way everything is set up on that roster is kind of perfect for what the Browns could be doing over the next year, because it could be just a full tank job this year. And if he's not the starter and it is Njoku, then that value for Harold Fannin is just going to keep dropping, and then I'll gladly go out and throw some 3rd-round picks for him because people are going to panic and be like, well, the Browns suck, he's not playing. And then all of a sudden, Njoku's contract doesn't get extended, and you've got Harold Fannin, who's your starting tight end there with let's just, for the sake of it, say an Arch Manning and an all new, coaching regime. It could look really nice. And oh my gosh, Dave Richard, I'm going to jump through the screen and strangle you, sir. He took another one of my picks.
Evan Ingram, I've spent while you collect yourself and make your next two picks, I'll just say that I'm going to give you an opportunity to say something positive about Evan Ingram, because anytime I have somebody on the show who kind of likes him, I need to do that so everybody's not poisoned by my negative takes on him. I will say that I think in this format specifically, I'm more open to the possibility of Evan Ingram mattering, just because the only thing he's ever done well in his entire career is earn targets. He is disastrously bad at turning those targets into fantasy points. And maybe some of that's the situations that he's played in, but he doesn't really score touchdowns. He doesn't really do anything after the catch. He just earns targets. I'm skeptical that this Denver offense, which has not featured the tight end at all, and I think we just got from Benjamin Albright yesterday, the day before, some more Devon Vele hype. We've got the Pat Bryant as the new Michael Thomas hype. Cortland Sutton still the obvious wide receiver one there. As you get ready to make this last pick, you took Zach Charbonnet with your 12th round pick. We're already in round 13. I know you guys haven't kept up with all of these picks. That's okay. I'll have a write-up with all the information for you, as always, at cbssports.com. What is your case for an optimistic view of Evan Ingram?
I think with a guy like Evan Ingram, and with any player that this happens to in free agency, it's that old moniker of follow the money. And when Sean Payton keeps talking about this joker role that is always the pivotal part of his offense, and then he says, finally, we went out and got the guy that can do that role, it's kind of silly of us to not assume that there are not plans for him to get volume. Now, like you said, he doesn't always do anything with that volume, so that might not be great. But with an offense that now has a lot of speed, in RJ Harvey at the running back position, Marvin Mims who can stretch the field, Cortland Sutton, who's also kind of been the deep threat over and over with Bo Nix. Bo Nix really specializes in getting the ball underneath. So yeah, even if Evan Ingram's not necessarily doing anything with that volume, if he can catch 5 or 6 passes a game and you're getting him in the 12th round, I'm cool with that value. I'm not sure what tight end number he is here, but it feels like he's well outside of tight end 15 at this point in this startup draft.
Yeah, it seems like he probably is. And again, I think like the one thing he does is receptions. So maybe this format will make him a little bit more relevant. I'm going to read through, we're about done with the show portion of this draft. We'll go ahead and finish up the last few rounds, and then again, I'll write it up for you guys. I'm going to read through my absolutely insane team, and we'll get some thoughts from Alfredo, and then we'll do the same with his team before we wrap this up. So my starting quarterbacks are Jordan Love and Kyler Murray. I also have Dak Prescott and Bryce Young. At running back, I have Ashton Genty, Quinshon Judkins, and DeAndre Swift. I'm perfectly fine with that. At wide receiver, it's a problem. Jordan Addison, Devontae Adams, Deebo Samuel, and Calvin Ridley. Maybe not a problem for this year. Probably a problem for the future, since all those guys are 30 or approaching 30. And then at tight end, I have Trey McBride, which is a cheat code in tight end premium scoring, maybe worth a first round pick. So again, the starting lineup looks like Love, Murray, Genty, either Judkins or Swift, Addison, Adams, and Deebo, with Trey McBride at tight end. I have 4 quarterbacks. If somebody doesn't do something they should do in the next 2 picks, I'm about ready to have 5 quarterbacks. Have I shown that it's foolish to take 4 quarterbacks in the first 6 rounds of a Superflex startup? Or do you think that there's some way to work through this and still have a good team?
I would say that you have proven that it is perfectly acceptable to do this, because, I mean, you're likely going to keep 3 or 4 of these now 5 quarterbacks that you have as you add Aaron Rodgers to your team.
I'm not even excited about Aaron Rodgers, but
you might as well.
13 in a Superflex draft, and a starting quarterback is available. You know what, Pop? Mr. Popinski wants me to take Joe Milton as well. I'm not going to do that. But yeah, go back to what you were saying about my team and how it's not terrible.
Yeah, no, it really isn't, because I mean, you've got 3 potentially starting running backs out of this roster. You've got 4 starting wide receivers, regardless of the age. I mean, Devontae Adams is going to give you production. Jordan Addison, you still have the youth there in a still I guess I don't want to say booming offense because we don't know what JJ McCarthy is going to be, but a potentially very good offense. I think it's kind of easy to go and find a few more wide receivers that might end up on the trade block to be your wide receiver 3 if you really need it. But this is not a bad roster construction at all. And I think that you have a lot of the biggest chess pieces or currency, whatever we want to call them, in this Superflex league, because there's some teams like me that I only have 2 quarterbacks, and I'm going to be probably looking for one really soon if we started this league and I have an injury to one of the 2 guys that I drafted.
And I'll just say, to start round 14, I don't know how this guy was still available. I hadn't looked at tight ends since I took Trey McBride, really. But Dallas Goedert, with the first pick in the 14th round, I think the demise of Dallas Goedert was greatly exaggerated. And we have a lot of reason to believe that he'll just probably be a top 12 tight end for as much as he plays this year, even if it's a low end starting tight end. So I may be flexing Dallas Goedert as opposed to one of those old wide receivers as we get into the season. Let's take a look at Alfredo's team. He doesn't have as many players as I do yet, but that's okay. You have Lamar Jackson and Drake May at quarterback. You took 2 quarterbacks to start this draft, did not take another one. Your running backs are Josh Jacobs, Aaron Jones, Zach Charbonnet, Najee Harris. Wide receivers are JSN, Tet McMillan, Jalen Waddle, Jamison Williams, Brandon Ayuk. And the only tight end on your roster is Kyle Pitts. Maybe I'll make you an offer of one of those quarterbacks and Dallas Goedert for one of those wide receivers. But the strength of the team, obviously, the starting quarterbacks and the exciting wide receiver upside. How do you feel about the running backs on your team?
I feel okay. I don't feel awesome about the running backs. I know that I'm going to be probably replacing Aaron Jones after this year. Could it be with Zach Charbonnet if he ends up with a role? I do think Kenneth Walker's the better running back, but if for any reason there's an injury or Ken Walker's not there into the next season, Zach Charbonnet has opportunity. Najee Harris is more of just the insurance play at this point, is like if I need someone who can start and give me maybe double-digit touches. But that's also, to me, seems like the easiest position to always replace. It's just someone you can grab off the waiver wire. It's someone that you're getting in round 2 or 3 of your rookie drafts next season. So the construction that I have here, I really like that I was able to go and get the positions that I don't want to have to replace in Dynasty. Now, tight end might be a different story if Kyle Pitts doesn't actually show up this season, which, you know what, for the sake of the conversation, I'm going to take this guy now because I'm excited of a potential breakout for him. As long as Dave Richard doesn't
take him,
I don't want to say anything.
Take him, Dave.
He's going to snipe me for the 9th time, and it's going to drive me absolutely bananas.
I'll tell you, Dave is right now just scouring through those orange stickers, trying to find the guy that you're talking about. And he didn't take him. Is it Brenton Strange?
There we go. Oh, look at you. Yeah.
It was Brenton Strange.
Yes. It is Brenton Strange. I think there's some really fun upside there with Brenton Strange, where in a Liam Cohen offense with Trevor Lawrence, we've seen Lawrence will throw to the tight end. We've seen Liam Cohen can make a good tight end with some volume with Cade Otton. I think there's something really fun there that you can have, especially in the 14th round as tight end, whatever he is right now off the board, like 19. He's still young, good athletic profile. Yeah, I'm all about that this late in the draft.
We will not be on air for the final 2 rounds of this draft, but I will just tell you, expect a lot of RB2s and RB3s to be drafted. You get to this portion of the draft, you're just hoping to hit the lottery by somebody becoming a starter that we don't think is going to happen. And as Alfredo talked about, that happens more at the running back position than any other position in fantasy football. But thank you, Alfredo, for going through this agonizing process with me of drafting while you talk about it. Thank you to Debo for making everything work behind the scenes. Thank you to everybody who was active in the chat and telling me that I made mistakes with my picks. We will talk to you next Tuesday.